who make pictures for self-expression. I'm not very sympathetic to those people. So you can't go and spend $20 million to express yourself, unless in so doing you are certain of communicating. I have more sympathy with the commercial aspirations of directors than I do with their creative aspirations. You cannot make a picture which costs $20 million without selling it to every cinema in the world. More people watch television than go to the movies. So if we're going to try and shake them out of their homes, it's got to be something completely original. It's the special event.
Here we go. Stand by and roll, please.
77, take 2.
Speed. Speed camera mark. And background. Action. And traffic. Action. Thank you.
The film takes place in 40 years from now, and I play a hard-nosed cop, basically. His job is to track down a group of escapees from an off-world colony. It's such a different kind of film than Star Wars is, really. That's really space fantasy. This is a kind of futurism, I think. Ridley's great to work with. I was surprised to find him taking as much time and care with the characters as he does with the visual aspects of the film.
Filming, I think, is like a love-hate relationship. I think I hate it when I'm doing it, and I only like it if the rushes are good. If the rushes are bad, I hate it even more. Doing a film like this is incredibly exciting. Yeah. You don't ever feel tired. That's what's odd. Because I think the adrenaline flow is so huge, you know? It's like flying a big aircraft and you don't know how to fly the plane. I don't call filmmaking art, you know? I think it's primarily a thing of communication and business, where you cannot forget that you have an audience. If you forget that, then you're a fool, because the process of filmmaking is far too expensive to mess around with, you know, that many dollars. There are, you know, several films have been made which one can say are certain pieces of works of art. But I think to go in saying I'm doing a work of art is very dangerous.
I answer this kind of a silly question, which is...
I'll give you a silly answer.
Okay. Did you ever think you'd wind up being a space toy in Woolworths?
No, I never did. I don't take it personally. It's hard to.
I met her at the Terrell Corporation. You know, the big boys in genetic engineering. They manufacture humans. Hell, they're so human you can't tell them from the real thing, and that's a problem. A big problem.
If I didn't care,
Say, kiss me.
more than words can say. If I didn't care,
That's not my kind of place.
then why do I thrill?
No choice, pal. Trust me.
Movie about to open called Blade Runner, and you'll meet him in a moment.
Say, kiss me. Kiss me.
If you add up the profits of just a few of the films that our next guest has appeared in, you would see very quickly why he is called in some circles these days the billion-dollar star. First, there was a little thing called American Graffiti. You remember that? Down the line, he was Han Solo in Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back. Last summer, he was Indiana Jones in a humble little film called Raiders of the Lost Ark. Well, those films are among the 4 or 5 biggest grossing pictures of all time. Coming this Friday, Harrison Ford is back on the big screen. This film is called Blade Runner. Here's a clip. Watch. We are delighted to welcome Harrison Ford to Live at 5. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you.
It's a little murky and rainy, but we should tell the people watching that the picture is set in the 21st century in Los Angeles.
Yes, in Los Angeles, and a few rainy days in Los Angeles, yeah.
Right, and you are a detective of sorts.
I play a detective, yes, I play a detective whose job it is to detect outlaw replicants, which are flesh culture products of the laboratory, slaves, all but human. And my job is to track down and control some outlaws. It's a combination of the old detective sort of story and brand new original context that we've never seen before.
What's your secret? You keep getting up to the plate and you only hit home runs. No singles, double. They always go right out of the ballpark.
I've been real lucky to work for good directors in real good films. And none of the films that you've mentioned is really is a personal success. I've been lucky enough to enjoy the fruits of participation in a lot of other talented people's success.
Well, I was reading a quote of yours that was in People or someplace where you said, I don't want to be a star, I want to be in pictures that are stars, which is a little incongruous. Most people who make their living acting want to be stars. They want to be recognized as...
Well, you want the opportunity that goes along with the nomenclature, which is to receive more variety of work and more work. The opportunities to work are there. But you don't want to be locked into doing the same thing again and again. That's the problematical part of it.
You had, there was a question along that line about taking the role in Raiders, wasn't there? That you were afraid in the beginning, looking at the script, that perhaps it was too close to...
Well, but the minute that I began to explore it and speak to Stephen about it, it became clear that the opportunity was there to have a totally different kind of character. The character was written. All I wanted was a little reassurance that I'd have success in distinguishing between the two of them. They were both written by Larry Kasdan. There were a lot of surface similarities, and they had the same kind of place in the film. So I wanted to make a distinction, and that was one of Stephen's ambitions as well.
Well, I think it worked out all right, didn't it? Satisfaction?
To mine, yeah. I was very pleased with the film.
Is it true that somebody said you became an actor out of fear? Explain that.
No, I was attracted to the experience when I found out how much it frightened me and how demanding it was. of me personally. And so that was the intrigue. I suppose that's where the quote comes from.
Is it still frightening to you? Do you still get nervous?
No.
Not anymore. No. $300–400 million later, you get the confidence and settle out, right?
No, but I mean, I have the confidence in the work that I'm doing now. The work that I was doing at that time, I couldn't have very much responsible confidence in. Now I can trust the people that I work with.
When we talk about that,
and myself more.
When we talk about that time, we're talking about really a different era almost in the business when you were a contract player, which is a word you don't even hear anymore because I guess they don't exist anymore. But you were kind of introduced into the old school of...
Yeah. Well, I was brought in. I started my career in 1965 or 66, and I was at that time signed to a 7-year contract with Columbia Pictures, which was a totally unsuccessful relationship for both of us. I was convinced that it was more important for me to find ways to develop myself, and they were very convinced that it was more important for me to, it would be easier for them and both of us if I would just pretend to be somebody else that had already proven their success. They chose Elvis Presley, in fact. They wanted me to style myself in the image of Elvis Presley.
That sounds bizarre. I guess it wasn't.
Seemed awfully strange to me at the time, too.
Do you sing, play the guitar? None of that stuff.
No. No.
So you, if I read correctly, at around 24, so you kind of dropped out. You took up, of all things, carpentry?
Yeah.
Taught yourself how to be a carpenter?
Yeah. It seemed an interesting thing to do. It was physical, and it took me completely out of the ball game for a while, which is what I wanted to do. And I was a carpenter for 8 years, during which period of time I did only 3 films. But they were all good films. American Graffiti, The Conversation, one other, a television film directed by Stanley Kramer. And suddenly I was not the same person that they knew before. I wasn't doing the same thing over and over on episodic television. I was just a person who was in good movies. That helped a lot.
What was it, Harrison, that kept you from getting so turned off, so soured by the manipulation, by whatever it was that you perceived was being done to you that you didn't like, to say to hell with it, I'm going to be a carpenter? And you know,
I never thought I would be an overnight success. I'd been around long enough to know that it took a period of time, and those that persisted often. The only ambition I really had at the beginning was to make a living as an actor. To enjoy the life of an actor.
Do you?
To do the work. Yeah, very much so.
You don't seem, if you'll pardon the expression, you don't seem show busy. You don't seem to fit the stereotype of a Hollywood.
The most interesting thing about me is the work that I do.
Oh, I would doubt that's true.
Oh, no, it is.
I mean, it's fascinating work.
It's fascinating to me.
One of the people that almost got in the way of one of the projects that you were very successful in was a guy by the name of Tom Selleck. He was apparently read for or tested for.
He was cast for Raiders.
He was cast for.
And a prior commitment, an option was exercised for Magnum PI. And that's when I was introduced into the situation.
And again, it was a reluctance on the part of, was it Mr. Lucas, who traditionally does not go back and use. He finds unknown people, discovers them, puts them in something like American Graffiti, and then they go on their own.
I think that's a natural and reasonable thing to do, and I was so surprised that he asked me again.
I want to thank you for coming and talking with us about one of the more remarkable careers, really, in pictures. With the exception of a couple of TV episodes that you didn't care for early on, you have been very, very lucky or successful or both at picking one winner after another, and there's no reason to expect that Blade Runner will be any different.
Thank you very much.
It's nice to have you here. Next time you're in New York, I'll stop by and we'll do this again.
Sure will.
Okay. That's the end of our program, Live at 5 for today. We thank you for watching. Please join us again tomorrow. Details of all of today's top stories are next now on News 4 New York.
Die trying to prove it. Harrison Ford is the Blade Runner, rated R. Starts Friday, June 25th at a theater near you.
of Star Wars fame and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Well, the new one is called Blade Runner. Recently, Ford took time out from being a movie hero to speak with us. But first, some scenes from that new movie.
Sushi. That's what my ex-wife called me. Cold fish. Hey, Iriwa.
Monsieur, Admiral Kovachin Engam Bitek.
He say you under arrest, Mr. Decker.
Tell him I'm eating.
Now on glide path, on course.
I can't rely on...
Say, kiss me.
Kiss me.
Well, that was a real cliffhanger. You might say it was a rooftop hanger at any rate. You know, Harrison, I know other people have pointed the comparison out. It is not my own. However, I was struck so much by the similarity to Bogart type character. Maybe not Bogart himself, in that it's a kind of swashbuckling, no-nonsense, down-to-earth, sort of not pretty boy, but sexy, realistic kind of. Is this conscious on your part? Are you aware of the similarity?
I play the part as it was written.
Yeah.
We hope to create behavior which helps tell the story. I have actually no awareness of Bogart or any of the other half-dozen people with whom I am consistently compared.
Well, I guess it's not that you look like Marcelli. I guess what I'm trying to say is the quality of the sort of hard-boiled guy, the hero who is not pretty boy handsome, but sexy in a kind of hard-boiled, take it as it comes, don't show too much emotion, but still very sexy kind of guy. Not the specific type.
But it's not imposed on the story. It comes out of the story. It comes out of the story or the ambitions of the screenwriter and the director. But I don't think about that. I work from a very different point of view.
Do you think you're sexy? On screen, not in real life.
I don't think about it. I mean, I don't think it pertains.
It seems like most of the successful films these days, with one or two exceptions, are sci-fi films, horror films that really concentrate on special effects. I wonder if you have any thoughts about that, why that is.
I guess it's that the technical expertise in these areas have reached the point where you can really do almost anything that the mind can imagine. That's a great temptation to a director. And yet the films that have been successful, the directors that are successful in handling this, I think are always careful and consistently introduce a very strong human story and allow the audience to find identify with some character which leads them into and through those, because special effects can only produce an effect, they can't produce an emotion.
Yeah, you still need the good story.
Yeah.
Something that I read I found greatly ironic and very funny. Apparently someone in this talent department at the studio where you were working told you point blank that you didn't have what it takes to make it in this business. I'd like to know where that guy is now. Have you ever found out?
Oh, I know right where to find him.
Are you serious?
You want to go over there now?
It must have been a real slap in the face. Did you take this guy seriously?
No.
You knew?
Well, no, I didn't know that I had it. I just knew that in theory he was wrong.
In an interview I read that you once did, you called yourself slow, even boring. You don't seem that way. What did you mean by that?
What I meant to say was that my life is boring, or I would like it to be boring. I mean, I have no ambition to be an exciting person. The most exciting thing I do is the work.
Yeah.
I don't mean doing the work, I mean the final product, just being involved in.
You like a kind of quiet, home-like, contemplative sort of
sure
thing?
Do.
You are with someone right now, if I may ask you about that, Melissa Matheson, who is a screenwriter who's just written E.T., which is the biggest movie around. And I wonder what that's like for the two of you now. You're at such successful points in both of your careers.
I'm very happy for her success, and I know how hard she works to do what she does.
Thanks, Harrison Ford. Thanks for being our guest today. And
He first soared into the limelight in Star Wars and followed that up with another blockbuster, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And now he's playing a 40s-style detective caught up in the 21st century adventure movie Blade Runner.
I can't rely on...
Say, kiss me.
When Newsweek magazine came out with its article on Raiders, it said you had the quiet, sardonic masculinity of a Gable or a Bogart. And I was wondering, by any chance, if these men were your screen idols when you were growing up.
I was one of the first kids in our neighborhood to have a television set. My father was in the advertising business, made commercials. So, and that experience was preceded by radio. I rarely went to films. Now, I don't go that often because I'm so jealous of the time I have just to stay home. It's hard to get me out of the house.
Is it tough maintaining a private life with all the success that you've had?
You can't go into a gas station and buy gas and have the exchange between me and the person who's selling the gas be about gasoline. It's about movies all of a sudden. So you begin to regret losing those moments of real life. And also you don't have the freedom to move around to watch other people when you suddenly realize they're watching you. Small price to pay, in a way.
Is it a small price?
No, I lied, actually. It's a big price to pay.
You started your career in a rather strange way. Your senior year in college was the pits. You more or less flunked out, shall we say.
No more or less is necessary. I flunked out of college 3 days before graduation. I was to have graduated with a degree in philosophy and a minor in English, but I was a terrible student during the entire 4 years, and it had just caught up with me at that last moment.
Why did you do so badly in school?
I don't know. I guess I was just a mess inside. I was the adolescent turmoil. And I really didn't have a focused ambition.
Now, there was no mention of you taking acting lessons in anything that I've read. How did you learn to act?
By doing. I have studied and with a number of good teachers, but I found that what I was learning was how to be good in acting class, and that the experience as I found it when I was working was a different kind of experience.
You gave up acting for a while, and then you went into carpentry?
After about 8 years in the business, I found myself doing the same thing over and over again in episodic television. And I felt that if I continued to do that, I would wear out my welcome. So I became a carpenter, made my living that way, and for 8 years I only did 3 films.
You're a very fine carpenter, I hear. What kinds of things do you build?
Oh, all kinds of things. I built cabinets, additions, a recording studio or 2. I worked on a Schindler house, a Lautner house, a Lloyd Wright house. Interesting.
You seem so incredibly laid back. What do you do to relax when you're out in California?
You think I'm relaxed now?
Yeah, I think you're very relaxed. I know you hate interviews.
Well, no, the next medical state is coma. I mean, I don't feel relaxed now at all. I feel very much responsible for this exchange. I don't feel like I'm relaxed. home, I do the normal stuff, the things everybody else does. You know, I rearrange the drawers, talk to my kids. I don't have as much time as I'd like.
One last question for you. If you could pick one adjective to describe Harrison Ford, what would you pick?
Tired.
Tired. Harrison Ford's next movie, the sequel to Star Wars Revenge of the Jedi, will be out next spring. Mr. Marish?
That's good to see that he doesn't seem compelled to recreate his on-screen character off-screen.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Last summer, this film, Raiders of the Lost Ark, starring Harrison Ford, made audiences cheer. This summer, Ford is back on the screen, but the movie he stars in now, Blade Runner, is of a decidedly different color. Dark and pessimistic, it's a film which offers a very controversial view of what may lie ahead.
About a year ago, you and I sat and talked about a film that was just about to be released at that time and became the biggest money maker of the summer, and certainly one of the biggest grossing films of all time, Raiders of the Lost Ark, in which you played, for want of a better term, a nice guy, a good guy. This was an upbeat film. Everybody had a grand time. Everybody from Grandma, here it comes.
I know where you're going.
Here it comes. Blade Runner has got to be about 180 degrees away from the character of Indiana Jones.
Fine. Fine.
Why fine?
Well, for me as an actor, that's an more interesting thing for me to do. Both for myself and I hope for the audience, as well as being able to do that sort of film. I have the opportunity to do other kinds of things because of the success of films like that. And part of what's interesting for me is to do different things, play different kinds of characters, work with different people in different kinds of films.
But in a film that is as brutalizing as this film is, as depressing as this film is?
Brutalizing? I don't know if it's brutalizing. I think in fact, that there's a pretty good argument for the fact that what the film is about is the rejection of a process of brutalization. It's the work of the vision of a director. It's, after all, a director's meaning. And this is the idea, Ridley Scott's idea of how the future might be. My job as an actor is to create behavior, to represent a character that helps tell the story.
Just play devil's advocate a little longer. Would it help to have at least one character, even the lead, a little more sympathetic, that you could latch onto? After all, you and Rutger are both hired killers. You just happen to be working on opposite sides. I'm generalizing.
We are generalizing, yeah. And what we're missing are some of the ironic distinctions.
Which are?
Well, that we're not talking about killing people. I'm not talking about killing people. My job is not to kill people. My job is to deal with a disturbance, a malfunctioning machine. It's a distinction made even more poignant by the fact that the machine that we're talking about looks like a human being. But in fact, it's invested with no more soul than a toaster. That's one of the thematic arguments of the film. I mean, that's one of the basic issues of what we're talking about. We're talking about what constitutes humanity, whether it's possible in terms of imagined future science to invest what might be a human being, but that it was the creation of a laboratory with enough signs of humanity to cause a sympathetic, empathetic reaction in another human being. Whether, in crude terms, you can actually can profit from a love affair with your toaster.
Tomorrow, Harrison Ford talks about playing Han Solo for the last time and why he doesn't want to be Clint Eastwood. For today, Jim Brown, NBC News, Hollywood.
The new movie Blade Runner has drawn fire from many critics, but its star Harrison Ford soon returns to safer ground in the third installment of Star Wars. Our man in Hollywood, Jim Brown.
Movie careers are often the result of finding the right role at the right time. In that respect, Harrison Ford has been unusually lucky. After doing little more than cameo appearances, he connected with Han Solo in Star Wars, and a major career was launched. Last summer, starring in Raiders of the Lost Ark, he impressed the film industry by becoming the only actor to star in the 3 top-grossing movies of all time. This Friday, that status will be tested with the release of Blade Runner, a futuristic film that paints a very pessimistic portrait of the 21st century.
Do you like our owl?
It's artificial?
Of course it is.
Must be expensive.
Very. I'm Rachel.
Deckard.
You have, since this picture has finished, gone on and done the last of the, I have to keep this straight, the second trilogy of Star Wars. You have completed principal photography. Am I correct?
Yeah. Revenge of the Jedi.
Revenge of the Jedi.
Completed that.
This is the Han Solo character again. Back to...
Yes, the lovable Han Solo that you've all been waiting for.
But I don't think it's giving any secret way to say this is the last appearance of Han Solo, because this ends the second trilogy.
It is, yes. Yeah. I'm happy to have, you know, have been part of the collection, part of all 3. I suppose it's a once-in-a-lifetime kind of experience. It's a very bizarre and wonderful thing that happened to me on the way to the office. I had no idea when we started that it was going to be as hugely successful or have so much influence in my life. And I've been well and truly satisfied with the entire experience. It's been a great relationship with the people that I've been involved with. And now it's over in that form. I still have other films to do with George Lucas. I'm very happy about that opportunity again. I've been really lucky to be, you know, involved in that.
You have reached the point now in your career where I suppose if you wanted to, you could become like a number of other major actors on the screen who not only act, but it is their production company, it is their this, their that. You have not done that as yet, am I correct?
Right.
Are you thinking about it, or
well, I'm thinking about it, but I'm resisting it at
Why?
the same time because it's another job. It's another job I have to do, and I like the job I've got. It leaves me just enough time to rest up sufficient to do it again, and to take enough time for real life.
No temptation at all. I mean, you see when you see a Burt Reynolds doing a Sharky's Machine or a Clint Eastwood doing a Firefox, don't you see Harrison Ford maybe directing Harrison Ford?
No, I don't. I like very much the process of being directed. I mean, it is an interesting experience to be directed, to work for somebody else. I think it would be less interesting for me to direct myself. Possibly less interesting for the audience as well, but that's just one man's opinion.
But I also hear you saying that when your role in a movie is finished, you like to walk out the door and go on to something else and let somebody else worry about the post-production, if you will.
Yeah, sure. And the pre-production and all of the other things. It takes a director 2 years to make a movie these days. It takes me 3 or 4 months. And that's enough. If I were making the movies, if I was involved in the production of the movies, it would take me a year or two as well. And
you don't want to spend that amount of time on it?
It would limit the number of times, you know, that I could do something different. It would be like having, God forbid, a real job.
For today, Jim Brown, NBC News, Hollywood.
Up next,
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Harrison Ford joins us to tell us about his new film called Blade Runner, a detective story set in the year 2019. We'll be right back.
Do you like our owl?
It's artificial?
Of course it is.
Must be expensive.
Very. I'm Rachel.
Deckard.
Well, that's really Harrison Ford meeting an attractive replicant in the new movie Blade Runner. Replicants, by the way, are artificial humans, not robots. Seemingly real people which have been made by genetic engineers as workers and warriors in the future. This all takes place 37 years from now in, where else? Los Angeles.
Harrison Ford plays a detective who is called from retirement to track down 4 dangerous replicants. We'll be talking with Harrison Ford in just a moment about this role after we see a scene from the film Blade Runner.
Sushi. That's what my ex-wife called me. Cold fish.
Hey, Iriwa. Monsieur, Admiral Kovachin Engam Bite. He said you're under arrest, Mr. Deckard.
Tell him I'm eating.
Captain Brian Toga. Enio Mayo.
Brian, huh?
Wait.
The charmer's name was Gaff. I'd seen him around. Brian must have upped him to the Blade Runner unit. That gibberish he talked was city speak, gutter talk, a mishmash of Japanese, Spanish, German, what have you. I didn't really need a translator. I knew the lingo every good cop did. But I wasn't going to make it easier for him.
Harrison Ford joins us now. The urban planners in L.A. are going to have a field day with that movie, I suspect. The rating of Blade Runner is an R. We've seen it, apparently not, there's no real sex in it, but there is lots of violence. And I'm wondering if you're concerned about whether or not that's going to cut out a lot of your fans from Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know, won't be able to go to this because of the rating.
Well, one of the reasons for doing this film for me as an actor was that it offered me an opportunity to do a different kind of film in a part that people might not expect to see me. I think it's very important to me career-wise to continue to do different sorts of things. I don't think there's a whole lot of violence in this film that isn't clearly a kind of movie violence. And the ironic point of it all is that the violence occurs not to human beings, but to something that looks like a human being. And my character is a part of that landscape.
The director, Ridley Scott, who also did Alien, for those who may not know it, described the movie as an adult comic strip. I wonder if you would agree with that, or how you would describe it.
I don't think I'd describe it as a comic strip at all, unless it's a... There's too much philosophical intention, too many intriguing intellectual aspects to it to be really a comic book, unless there's comic books that I'm not really aware of.
Now, you were, I guess, Raiders could be called a, you know, a fantasy adventure, and then the Star Wars series are all science fiction fantasy, and then this is sort of a futuristic fantasy. Are you, you know, do you like that personally, or is there's some other reason for this trend, it seems?
No, I think I've taken full advantage of the success of Star Wars by doing a variety of different things, and these happen to be the most successful of those projects that you're thinking about now, but I've done a number of different kinds of films in different parts, not all fantasy things at all.
Your first major break was American Graffiti, and then, which, like Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, were among the top grossers in film history, so you've been very successful. I wonder if you think much about the times before that, when you weren't a household word and a big success and a big box office draw. The bad old days, as it were.
No, I thought enough about them while it was going on. Right now, I'm rather more consumed with what's going on now.
What about what's going on next? You're going to, I don't know if you started, but you're going to do the third in the trilogy for Star Wars. Is that being done now? Is that
it's, I finished my part in it about a month ago. There's probably a year's worth of post-production, and it'll be coming out in May of 1983.
And how does it differ? Can you tell us at all how it differs, even though the whole thing isn't finished yet from the first two?
I can't tell you anything.
Are you? Is that a rule, or
no?
You just don't want to give it away?
No, it's. I think it's a very good policy. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. Anybody that has followed the story up to this point has their own investment in it, and I think part of the fun of it for them is to enjoy the experience clean.
Didn't I read somewhere that they're going to make a TV series out of Raiders? And if so, can you imagine that?
Now, they won't be able to make a TV series out of Raiders. They'll be able to imitate it in a way that will define its ambitions from the beginning, and I don't think it's any potential for success that arises from imitation.
So you won't have anything to do with it, whatever it is, right?
No.
I wonder, just quickly before we go, if you could tell us a little bit about why there seems to be so much interest in science fiction these days. Over the last few years, Close Encounters, Star Wars, Alien, E.T., the Star Trek movies, Blade Runner, sort of in the science fiction. What is it that moviegoers want that they get in this kind of movie?
I don't know, except that, of course, it's a way of getting into an area of fantasy that's very, that people enjoy, being led out of the world they live in into something not necessarily more attractive, but someplace they've never been before, and that's the easiest place to get to, I guess.
Okay, thank you very much, Harrison Ford, for joining us today on Take Two. The movie is Blade Runner.
Thank you.
A note of tomorrow on Take Two, our movie critic Carol Buckland will have a review of Blade Runner and of the new Clint Eastwood movie called Foxfire.
Old faces. Familiar anyway. Blade Runner is a futuristic movie starring the lead of the Star Wars movies and Raiders of the Lost Ark, Harrison Ford.
Firefox. It stars Clint Eastwood, whose movies are known simply as Clint Eastwood movies, no matter what the names of them are. With us now to tell us what's new and what's not with these actors and their new movies is our movie critic, Carol Buckland. Carol.
Thanks, Don. Well, the summer of '82 may be known as the season of special effects, ranging from the heart-tugging artistry of Steven Spielberg's E.T. to the stomach-churning horror of John Carpenter's The Thing. Two new films, one by Harrison Ford, one by Clint Eastwood, are dominated, even overwhelmed by special effects. Here's a look at Blade Runner and Firefox. Firefox is a Cold War thriller that's short on suspense and characterization and long on running time. Clint Eastwood plays Mitchell Gant, a hotshot pilot who suffers inconvenient flashbacks on his Vietnam experiences. Despite his problems, the stone-faced Gant is the best there is in the flying biz, so the U.S. government recruits him to steal a top-secret Soviet plane, codenamed the Firefox. The Firefox can fly rings around anything the Pentagon has, so it's no surprise Washington wants it.
I'm speaking to the individual who has stolen the property of the USSR.
So we're getting the royal treatment.
You will not, of course, make it to wherever you are going.
Before Gant gets near the superplane, the audience has to endure more than an hour of tedious skullduggery. Once the Firefox is up, though, the movie gets off the ground, thanks to special effects wizard John Dykstra.
Let's see what this thing can do.
Of flying around in Blade Runner 2, though none of it's up in the wild blue yonder. The year is 2019. The scene is a decaying Los Angeles. Blade Runner is a downbeat detective story done up in futuristic dress. At the center is Deckard, a burned-out bounty hunter played by Harrison Ford. His unpleasant and bloody duty: track down and destroy 4 rogue replicants, artificial humans.
I quit because I'd had a belly full of killing. But then I'd rather be a killer than a victim. And that's exactly what Bryant's threat about little people meant. So I hooked in once more, thinking that if I couldn't take it, I'd split later.
While director Ridley Scott and his production team powerfully and depressingly evoke their vision of a high-tech Babylon, Blade Runner remains empty and muddled at the core. It may dazzle the eye, but it leaves a bitter taste in the mouth. Firefox carries a PG rating. While there's a number of violent scenes in it, the production is tame compared to some other Clint Eastwood movies. Blade Runner, on the other hand, features a crescendo of graphic and bloody violence near the end, and it's rated a well-deserved R.
Well, Carol, do you think then the special effects are worth the $450 or whatever it costs to go see these films or not?
As far as Blade Runner goes, I think that movie buffs, people who are devoted to special effects, may be very much overwhelmed by it. The problem, I think, is that a number of movie makers nowadays think if you just razzle-dazzle the audience a little bit, you don't have to give them characters they can care about or a storyline they can follow. I think prior to this, one of the best examples of that was the first Star Trek film, in which a series that had made its reputations on stories, characters, and ideas suddenly came out with a movie that lacked a story, had the same old characters doing the same old thing, and tried to overwhelm you with special effects. So I guess it all adds up to what you want. If you want to go to be entertained and interested, I don't necessarily think these are movies for you, and I don't think that special effects can ever take the place of a story and characters that the audience wants to have empathy with.
Well, thank you for joining us, Carol, to tell us which movies have the stories and which ones have the special effects.
In our next episode...